Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mary. Thanks for being here. I've been feeling pretty beaten down by life recently. I've just had a string of bad events happen. Whenever I'm going through it in life, I reach for a book. When I've had to be the most resilient, I read the most voraciously. I really believe in the fortifying power of books more so than feeling like an escapist urge. There's this quote I really like by Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, and it's from Brave New World. And I know it seems counterintuitive to quote Brave New World when I'm trying to make you feel better, but stick with it. The quote is, "You read and you're pierced." To me, reading has the power to skewer bad emotions and make them seem less foreign. At the same time, that act of piercing is illuminating. A good turn of phrase is like an arrow arcing to your heart. And in writing that phrase, the writer takes some of the burden off of your shoulders and lets it dissolve into the story. I'm going to go ahead and recommend you 3 books for when everything sucks. I may have coincidentally read the 3 books in the last year of my life. When I finished these stories, I came out the other end of the back cover feeling just refreshed and like I could handle what life was kind of dishing out to me. They're all shorter books, so it's okay if you feel sluggish or apprehensive. They don't take a lot of time to get through. I hope you get to experience the same kind of comfort that these books gave to me. When everything sucks, read Upstream by Mary Oliver. You might know Mary Oliver as a poet, but she's also an essayist, and an incredible one at that. I picked this book up on a whim at my public library because I was in the mood for some poetry, but I'm glad I landed on this book. When I think of this book, I'm reminded of a Tumblr post that I saw recently. Yes, I still use Tumblr. What about it? And this post on Tumblr was talking about how poets embody or channel a certain emotion when they're writing. For Mary Oliver, this emotion is relief. Whenever I read Mary Oliver, the tension leaves my body, especially in my shoulders. It just goes out. Reading this book, Upstream, reminded me of a really specific memory from my childhood. Me and my family were on a trip to New Hampshire. We were hiking through the woods to get to a watering hole. It was overcast that day and just a little hot and muggy. We arrived at the watering hole. No one was there, and I just sort of sank into that crystal clear blue water, and it was perfectly cool on my skin. Not chilly, just totally refreshing. That's what reading this book felt like to me. Upstream is nice and slim. It's only 178 pages long, and it's broken into 4 sections. The first is about Oliver's childhood and how she fell in love with nature. She describes this love as going upstream and never returning home. Oliver pulls you back into childhood with her. It's really charming to imagine little Mary Oliver going through the woods with a knapsack full of Walt Whitman books, who she called the brother she never had, trudging about with her dog, building lean-to structures, and, just enjoying the outdoors as a little kid. It just speaks to you. Her writing stems from this childlike, compassionate, and honest place. I love the honesty of children, and I also think there's a through line to the craft of poetry. To me, poets are always sort of searching for truth. And because of her background as a poet, Oliver's prose has startling clarity and honesty. One of the main themes of this essay collection is solitude, and if everything sucks, you're probably feeling a little alone. And this book can teach you to learn to live with solitude and learn to appreciate it and love it as this really transformative part of life. Solitude is necessary for growth. This book was especially reassuring to me because when things are difficult, I have the tendency to turn inwards. Solitude is the path to understanding yourself, reflecting on your actions and how they impacted other people. Being alone and choosing to be alone gives the world a special kind of clarity that you don't get being surrounded by other people. In being alone, you learn to comfort yourself, and this is the world that Upstream inhabits. I read this book alone. I read it staring out my window here, which you can't tell, but I have a pretty amazing view. I let Oliver's words wash over me, and I let go of the guilt that I felt about turning inward and preferring being alone. There's this quote that I love from page 162. Let me be myself and then some. Oliver creates in each of her chapters these little, lush, honest, green temples in her writing for you to sit with yourself in. You do not have to give anyone the responsibility of your life when you're reading this book. It is your life. You made it, and you can do what you want with it. You can live it and give it back someday without bitterness to the wild and weedy dunes. Oliver also spends time in this book explaining the desire and almost this preternatural urge to create. The presence of the desire to create is so strong in this book that it extends off of the page and the words that Oliver is writing. You really feel it in you. I think there's some really useful advice in this book for people who are thinkers and creatives. I've got a mind with a mind of its own. I take problems and situations and emotions and I turn them over and over and over again in my head. And instead of just feeling them, I just grind them down into these little nubs and I can't really do anything with that. Oliver articulates this perfectly. Knowledge has entertained me, it has shaped me, and it has failed me. Something in me still starves. Oliver takes the starving hunger and places it in creation, whether poetry or carpentry, as she details later in the book. It allows her to recognize the pride in a job well done. The last section of the book is a love letter to Provincetown. It's a lovely story about community through artistry or just neighborly goodness. That feels sort of absent from the world right now, at least to me. Oliver doesn't make you yearn for this type of community, but just inspires in you a desire to go out and build it for yourself. So that's Upstream by Mary Oliver. There's so many beautiful, polished pearls of wisdom in this book, and I'm on the lookout for a physical copy to add to my bookshelf because I wrote half of it down in my little commonplace book, so that's a sign that I need to go out and make it my own. When Everything Sucks, read All About Love by Bell Hooks. This book was the unfortunate recipient of Book Talk fame. People would even make parody videos about this book, featuring male manipulators trying to sell you ethical non-monogamy. From the title, you might even think that it's part of the pop psychology movement. All About Love was published in 1999, and it is remarkably current nearly 30 years after its publication. All About Love is feminist thinker Bell Hooks' attempt to define and then redefine love and how we practice it. Her main thesis is that love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Hooks argues that we do not have a full understanding of love because we do not have an intentional definition of love, which is really interesting because it feels like discussions around love and loving are often regressive. They look to the past. Modern dating apps are bad. The youth are lonely. Divorce rates are high. That is bad. But Hooks offers you a much more generative and communal approach to love that has helped me get out of some ruts in my life. This book is the first in the Love Song to the Nation trilogy. The other two books are Communion and The Will to Change, and these two books explore loving and giving love through female and male perspectives. This book opens the trilogy on a fundamental definition of what love is and what it could be. Hooks describes the attributes that go into the extension of love as clarity, justice, honesty, commitment, spirituality, values, community, mutuality, romance, healing, and destiny. She writes with razor-sharp clarity, which is so impressive because she's making almost like these sweeping generalizations about human behavior and human relationships. And the way she does it, it seems more of like an appeal to a universal truth or a recognition of universal suffering, more so than trying to cover up specific narratives. Clear that Hooks is living the love ethic that she writes about, with honesty and authenticity, and sometimes a little bit too much earnestness. She explores the idea of love and the act of loving from a decidedly feminist perspective, while offering critiques of the society that we've sort of built today that is devoid of love ethic, as she calls it. Read this book when you're feeling lonely, when you're not feeling seen or appreciated, because hooks are there to give you an invitation to join in communion with each other, with really recognizing the humanity in others through your capacity to love and inspiring the capacity to love in others. The most dominant attribute of love that Hooks is a proponent of is honesty. Like I said, her writing is incredibly honest, and she envisions a kind of honesty that is really uncomfortable for us to conceive. She wants us to do away with white lies, which is really hard to imagine. But all of this is in service of building a love ethic that's built on a foundation of total open communication and trust, and you can't have that without honesty. This book offers you a path to a more loving, kind, and just world. Hooks fearlessly dissects phenomena like child abuse and patriarchy and spousal abuse in order to show us our defeats in love and where it can triumph. Reading this book has made it simpler to be kind to others and to myself. When things go wrong in my life, I take a really punitive attitude towards myself, and Hooks squashed that urge in me, which I am forever grateful for. There's so much wisdom in this book, and I really believe it could thaw the stoniest, iciest, hard-headed cynic's heart. Again, I especially loved the chapter on honesty. You can tell that's the foundation of Hooks' writing and her theories about love and how to be a more active perpetrator of love and a love ethic, as she calls it. Finally, when everything sucks, read Me Talk Pretty One Day by David Sedaris. This book is so damn funny. I've offered you guys like these sort of serious and reflective, solitary works about how to weather a hard time in life, but this is the book I reached for on one of the hardest days of my life in the past year. And whenever I have an incredibly terrible day, I always reach for something by David Sedaris. This is because he's the only author that genuinely makes me laugh when I'm reading, and laugh out loud. Sedaris is whiny and neurotic. He is a gay, Greek Orthodox Woody Allen without all the skeletons in the closet. Well, most of the skeletons in the closet. He deserves an award for being the greatest kvetcher of all time. He's the only person I've read who could be so relentlessly negative and self-deprecating, and he's still a total pleasure to read. Me Talk Pretty One Day is a short story collection. If you really like a story in here, go ahead and look it up on YouTube, because Sedaris is kind of a lifelong contributor to This American Life, so a lot of the stories he's written over the years are also produced for radio, and he has amazing comedic timing, which is clear from his writing, but it's just a different experience listening to it. Also because he has a voice that is really unique and distinct, and I think it's really funny. If you're someone like me who giggles when you read him, you will be laughing until you cry when you listen to him tell his own stories. Sedaris is someone who has come under fire for lying and embellishing his stories, but I don't care. I could care less. Keep lying. David Sedaris, you're the best liar on earth. It's part of his style to exaggerate, and when something is funny, it's funny, and what he writes is hilarious. Beyond just being like a really funny person naturally, Sedaris has had like kind of a crazy, interesting life that's just really unique. He grew up in a Greek Orthodox family. They shipped him off to Greece, I believe, at one point in his life. He moved around a little bit. His father was an IBM engineer. His sister, Amy Sedaris, is also pretty famous. His family is just insane. They're crazy people. Sedaris himself has lived in France, in Paris, in Normandy, but he says he doesn't speak French, which is kind of a lie. He's also worked as a mover in Manhattan. He got a degree from the Chicago Institute of Arts. He worked as a teacher. He's just done all these interesting, odd little jobs, and he hated every second of them. My favorite stories in this short story collection are Jesus Shaves, which you can also listen to. I listen to Jesus Shaves every Easter. I also really like The Great Leap Forward, which is about his time as a mover in Manhattan, and You Can't Kill the Rooster, which is about his brother Paul Sedaris, who I think is the most interesting character in all of his works about his family, because he's just like totally unfiltered, and it's a really great foil to kind of the uptightness of the Sedaris family. What I think makes Sedaris a really good comedy writer is he's the king of the callbacks. So he'll just mention something sort of offhand at the beginning of the story, and he'll just almost like sideswipe you with it in the middle of the story, and that's something that just sort of tears at your seams and I think makes for really hilarious writing. What also makes Sedaris a really good comedy writer is that he takes the whole story to build the joke. He'll put in those little tiny callbacks, but if I read you a passage from here, you'll probably just like exhale a little bit, but you won't be laughing. You have to read the whole story to get the whole picture of the joke, because the ending lines in some of these stories are so hilarious, but if I just read them to you right now, they don't make a lot of sense. Sedaris just like pulls in all these little threads and gives you just this punchline that knocks you on your knees, and it's just hilarious every time. I also think this book is a really good thing to read when you're going through it, because Sedaris is constantly going through it. He had times in his life where he was living pretty slim, and he handles it, I don't want to say with a lot of grace, but with just good humor, and that makes me feel like I'm able to sort of weather whatever I'm going through and just kind of laugh at myself, which everyone needs a dose of. I'm recommending this book for when everything sucks, because laughter truly is the best medicine. And I know I will never be able to complain about the things in my life in a way like David Sedaris does, so it just makes me get over them a lot easier. Alright, those are my book recommendations for when everything sucks. I can't tell you how much reading has given me a lot of comfort when things are just rough. These books are just texts that I've really relied on to help me feel a little bit better, and I hope you can get something out of them. I'll see you later. Bye.